So, welcome to the Science and Art of Open Water Swimming. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Terry Griffiths, an ocean engineer, a long distance swimmer, and someone who approaches the water with a deep sense of curiosity and intent. Terry isn't a swimmer chasing podiums, he's someone who's drawn to the challenge of understanding the ocean and finding better ways to move through it. Over the past few years, that's taken him from his first Rotto solo crossing through to completing the Australian Triple Crown of marathon swimming. Three very different swims across a channel, along a coastline, and river environments. Along the way, he's been applying his background in ocean engineering to think differently about waves, currents, and conditions, and how small decisions can make a big difference over long distances. In this conversation, we explore Terry's journey into the water, what drives him to take on these challenges, what he's learned from the Australian Triple Crown, and how he's now thinking about the next big step, a future attempt at the English Channel. This is a thoughtful, grounded discussion about swimming smart, learning from the ocean, and what it means to take on big goals in your own way. Terry, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks very much, and a huge thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. I'd like to start with getting a bit of a sense from you. What came first? Was it the ocean itself or the desire to understand how it works?
Absolutely, the ocean. One of my mum's favourite anecdotes is when I first learned how to crawl, and she took me down to the beach, and I just crawled towards the water, and I kept on crawling. Even as the water came up past my nose, I just kept on going. So yeah, ocean first.
And then how did you end up in ocean engineering?
By pure chance that I happened to hear about a job going as I was coming through to the end of university, undergrad, and I was either going to go and join the Navy because the Collins class program was recruiting at that time, or I happened to land a job as a subsea engineer. And so I was definitely focused on finding a pathway into working in ocean engineering, given my passion for the ocean, and I wound up by that means just winding up in oil and gas and subsea pipelines was the sort of the opportunity that came up, and so that sort of set my career trajectory, and just approached it with a view to learning as much as I could.
As a child, you're crawling towards the ocean, enjoying the
Yeah.
water. At what point did swimming become more than just exercise?
So actually, through like my childhood and adolescence, I swam for fun. It was never about competition or even events. So when my son Callum was about 12 years old, he started to get into open water swimming. And as he progressively got older and eligible to tackle longer and longer distances, I would kind of, when he was doing 2.5 Ks, I did 1.5 Ks so I could finish and then be there at the finish line to celebrate him crossing the line. And eventually he said, no, not good enough. If I'm swimming 2.5 Ks, you got to swim 2.5 Ks. If the ocean is full of jellyfish and it hurts, you got to hurt too. I want a parent that's in there actually being a part of this adventure. And so the distances kept on getting bigger and bigger until he and I were doing 5K swims. And then, as is often the way, over a few beers, my mate Scott and I started talking about the Rottnest Channel swim. And one thing led to another, and all of a sudden there was a dare laid down. I'll sign up if you do. And the rest is history.
So you've done a lot of swimming from shorter distance to the longer stuff, initially as a team. We've had Scott on previously and he gave us a bit of a background as to that first team crossing and how you tried to engineer your way across. I'm just wondering from your engineering work, do you see parallels between the problems you solve at work and what you're doing in the ocean as a swimmer?
Oh, absolutely. The big difference is that as an ocean engineer working on subsea cables or pipelines, it's not you personally that's out there experiencing it. The difference in being in the ocean swimming it is that you get to actually experience the outcomes of your engineering. And so all through my upbringing, My dad was a research scientist and was very, very big on experiential learning. Do it safely, but if you want to go out there and try something, mix things together, see if they blow up, whatever, it was very much about try it and see what happens. Do so safely, but experience it. And that carries through into the approach that I take to work. It's very much about, okay, other people have done it, but if we stop and deconstruct it, how can we engineer it? How can we optimize it? And that is fundamentally that journey that I've been on. Once you prove that you can actually do a solo crossing to Rottnest, the question then is, okay, so what can I change? What can I improve? What can I actually pull out, break apart, reconstruct, and then go again? So it is actually about that journey through learning by experience.
And so, have you consciously applied this engineering thinking to your swimming all the
Totally.
time?
I don't know about all the time, but certainly, for example, reaching out and collaborating with Gabby Villa over nutrition, that was very much a conscious decision. Actually deciding as part of that to experiment with wearing a glucose monitor during the swim and actually monitoring blood glucose and feeding intervals and so on. You could just play around with different foods and you can actually just follow Gabby's advice and you can feel it. But if you can instrument it, measure it, that actually gives you much less ambiguous data on which to actually base decisions about. Do I need to increase the amount of each feed? Do I need to change the food mix? Do I need to change the interval between feeds? And that's 18 months to 2 years of just experimenting, trying different things and settling down on something that seems to work for me. And I think it's fair to say it's made a huge difference.
So that's really interesting. You're looking at more than just the swim itself, but then looking at the other components that can obviously assist. And with that, as you indicate, your background is engineering, and you can certainly explore that. But utilizing the expertise of others is certainly an important part of developing your swimming.
Definitely. And to be fair, I think it's not just myself. There's a group of us, including you, that are involved in doing things like experiments in the wave flume out at UWA's Coastal and Ocean Engineering Laboratory. And that's something that is part of that sort of ancillary or other parallel research activities that actually have huge interest of their own right. I mean, actually swimming in a wave flume where someone actually tries to dial up and down the waves to see can they really mess you up by whatever waves they're throwing at you. That's great fun. You pay a huge amount of money to go to Wet and Wild and actually have to pay and queue to do it, whereas actually here we're calling it research and we get to do it for free. It's great.
Now, just looking at your swims, your first Roto swim was around about 9 hours. You've certainly progressed
9
your
hours and
swim
3
times.
minutes, I think. Yep.
Yep. And now we're sort of under the sevens towards 6.5 for that 20K. You're doing the swims that most people wouldn't even consider. So you're not chasing podiums. So what drives you to continue swimming?
At some point, I have to hit something that I can't do. We got awfully close with the port to pub swim a couple of months ago. I was pretty disappointed with how slow I was swimming and I was ready to hop out, but the support crew were determined that I wasn't going to hop out. I was going to keep on going just for a little bit more and then a little bit more. But ultimately, it's a question of at what point have we actually fully explored everything that we can do to improve not so much performance, but just improve capability? Have we pushed every button? Have we actually explored every opportunity to be able to actually go further? It's not about going faster, although faster's nice. It is actually about seeing, is there a limit? Is there something that actually says, right, now we've done it? Tick the box, that's enough. I haven't got there yet.
Just going back Can you tell us a bit more about your experience at Port to Pub this year?
So November last year, as you've alluded to, knocked off the Geo Bay swim in 6 hours 40 minutes or something, which is roughly 20-minute Ks, which is about as fast as I swim in the ocean. All the sort of the training swims, jetty to jetties down at Coogee, sitting on that sort of pace. And so I went into Port to Pub looking at the forecast, and the conditions were absolutely beautifully perfect for up until 1 p.m., 2 p.m., something like that. So I was really hoping to smash out a 9-hour Port to Pub 25 marathon. And by the first turn at Cottesloe, it was pretty clear that I was sitting way too slow in the water to actually make that happen, which then meant by about halfway across, I was experiencing back cramps or like spasming on the left side and having to sort of curl up in a ball to stretch it out, and my left hand wasn't getting a lot of thrust. So it all just turned into a bit of a shit show. However, with some vigorous verbal encouragement from Scott and my wife Carissa and others, they did encourage me to keep on going and actually finish. And I did finish, and I did finish faster than my first Port to Pub crossing, which took me 11 hours and 3 minutes. But compared to all of the learning that I've done and all of the nutrition and everything else, it wasn't something that was, for me, an exemplary demonstration of everything that I'd learned. And so it turns out that actually, despite all of the learning thus far, there are other factors which appear to be fairly important that can have a huge influence on your swimming. So despite the fact that my preparation, doing the distance, building up that distance and that endurance and the nutrition, all of that, weather was perfect. However, over the prior couple of months, there'd been a considerable amount of stress, like personal stress, and it appears that that's something that translated into me not actually performing as well as in theory I should be able to. And that's something that was really quite interesting about one of your podcasts with Kate, and discussions around how sleep and stress can have a huge impact on performance. So that's then the trigger to say, okay, so before getting too excited about the English Channel, given that work is work and work's going to go through good days and bad days and good months and bad months, if that's not something I can control, how can I at least learn about it, understand it, and actually do the best I can to adapt, to improve around what that situation's going to be? So already for the dates that I've got booked for the English Channel swim next year in June, I know that the week or so before that is a big industry conference over in the UK. And so it's actually recognizing the fact that if I'm not careful, I will wind up in a similar situation for the English Channel swim, and then start thinking back from there, right, how can I prepare in such a way that I can be a part of that industry event, but not actually then let that sort of stress carry over into the swim. So it's just you think you know stuff, and then all of a sudden there are other things that you didn't actually focus on, you didn't learn about, and now they come up as a new parameter to explore and to learn about. So hence, I stopped in Bustleton on the way back from down south yesterday, met with Kate and had a really fabulous discussion about strength training, and that's not been a big part of my swim training thus far, and that appears to have significant potential to actually help manage things like work stress better.
Now, I just want to swap and explore some more of your learnings through the Triple Crown, the Australian Triple Crown. I'll give you an opportunity first just to explain what the Triple Crown is for those that may not know.
There's a couple of ways of describing it. Special sort of class of craziness, the people that actually go and do the Triple Crown. But in actual fact, they are such different swims, so different. And so to talk about them from the experience of doing them not as swims, but just as adventures, ocean adventures, they are extraordinary each one in its own right. So obviously people have a fair awareness in this. People listening to this podcast probably know about the Rottnest Channel Swim. They probably know about Port to Pub, may well know about the Port to Pub Marathon Swim, which is where you swim from Leighton up to Cottesloe, back to Leighton, go back around the start mark, and then start swimming across to Rottnest. Dumbest course I've ever come across. I mean, you could do the 5K loop at Rottnest. That'd be much better, but no, we've got to do it here. But it is the course, and that's what you've got to train for, and that's what you've got to swim. So Palm to Shelley, swimming along that New South Wales coastline, that North Sydney beaches, is breathtaking. You've got all the sort of $1 million mansions all perched up on the cliffs. You've got the start beach, Palm Beach, is breathtaking. It's amazing. And then you're swimming down past all the different famous sort of surf beaches all the way south till you hit Manly. It would not be proper to omit to talk about the big grey fish that came to visit during that swim. Rottnest Channel Swim, if there's a shark somewhere, then they sort of get everyone out of the water. Very proactive helicopters and so on. For the Palm to Shelley, just as we were at Long Reef, there was another swimmer a few hundred metres in front of us, and the kayak, for some strange unknown reason, all of a sudden leapt a metre up into the air. Kayaker fell in the water beside whatever big grey fish helped the kayak launch up into the air. Everyone kind of got a bit excited. So I had to swim across and was ready just to grab onto the ladder and the back of the boat and jump out of the water. The event organizer is a real character and came screaming up in his jet ski and was like, "What are you doing not swimming? The shark's here. Swim that way. Hurry up." And so basically it was, well, we're going to sit here in the water where the shark is, or we're going to keep on going. And so I had my kayaker right beside me there, and I was right beside the boat ladder, and the propeller from the boat was literally, I could reach out, I could see it. It was right there. And we just basically kept on going, right in between me and the kayak and the boat with, the drill we do, the sort of one arm, where that's the ladder. And so I was ready to just grab the ladder and heave out of there. But that swim was epic. Towards the end, basically, I was exhausted. And I could see the finish line. And my wife, Carissa, was paddling at the time and kept on saying, "No, you're going to come this way." It's like, "No, I can see the finish. I'm going for the finish." "No, you've got to come this way." "But the finish is there." "I'm not going that way. The finish is there." It's like, "But there's a surf break in the way." "Don't care. The finish is there. I'm going that way." And she came around and basically barged me back out of the surf break to get through to the finish line. Great swim, but so different to Derwent River. So Derwent River is surreal. It's in Hobart, but the vast majority of it is in the bush. So you're actually swimming down a river you start in pitch black, like because of the timing. You do it during spring tide, so there's full moon. So you're driving up into Norfolk. What is it? New Norfolk Bridge. The start, and it's like daylight. The moon is just brilliant, and you're driving up through the forest, and you get to the start, and all of a sudden the moon's set, and it goes utterly pitch black. The water is pitch black. The sky's pitch black, and you're just jumping in, and the river's flowing. And so, as a swim, you've got the most incredible assistance from the river, stream flow, and also the tidal flow. So that swim took a whole lot of training to get acclimatized to swimming fairly cool water. So the average water temperature for that swim was 16. I think it started about 15.5 and gradually drifted up during the day. That, again, no super suits, nothing, budgies and grease. That's all you're allowed. It is an epic swim, and I kept on getting trouble because I kept on swimming like water polo swimming, and the skipper that we had was like, "Get your head down. What are you doing with your head up?" And it's like, "I'm looking around. It's beautiful. I want to see." And it's like I don't know if you've ever seen the director's cut of Apocalypse Now, where you're going down through this jungle And all of a sudden you come across this kind of massive factory on the side with great smoke billowing out the top of it. So it's the paper mill. And you just swim past this sort of surreal lit up thing and then keep on going and you're back in the bush again. So that swim, that got hard. The first 33 Ks were fine, but the last couple of Ks, the sea breeze was coming straight up the Derwent, so I was swimming into a whole lot of chop. So that was pretty hard to finish. So we wound up cutting across to the north side of the river and then just creeping along the coastline. And I had a bit of a rest and just eased the pace a bit in the lee of the north side where we had a bit of shelter. And then it was just a bit of a smash through to the finish. But the end of that swim wasn't pretty. I suspect my stroke went all sorts of haywire, but we got there. So it's very, very hard to compare those swims because they're such different experiences. You know, you got the sort of the channel crossing where, you know, you got the sea breeze come in and you got like great rolling breakers come through that gap south of Rottnest where the channel is, compared to Palm to Shelley where you're just swimming through. You know, they were great, like 4 meter high, 15-second swell, but you're just swimming up and over them. They're not like the sort of the sea breeze that you get in Rottnest. And then the Derwent River, for the most part, it's actually just beautifully flat, except for a few spots. Like there was the spot going underneath the Bridgewater Bridge, which is essentially like being flushed down the toilet. The flow narrows down and you've got like up to 1 meter per second of stream flow.
So, Terry, I'm interested now. What sort of things did you consider in terms of your planning, in terms of ensuring that you were actually ready or you could utilize the conditions to your advantage?
Well, there's multiple facets to that. So for both Palm to Shelley and Derwent River, I got into town about 5 days beforehand and actually specifically set aside a whole day of just driving along the route. So Derwent River, jumped in at Norfolk Bridge, jumped in like a few different spots. Derwent River was also, because the currents are such a big part of that swim, you know, the Winnie the Pooh thing of poo sticks. So grab a stick, throw it out into the middle, and then actually stopwatch and walk along beside the stick as it drifts down and measure the currents. And then the night before the swim, Scott and I were basically going through the timing and looking at when the high and low tides were and picking like how much of a assistance the stream flow and tidal current were going to offer. And so built a rudimentary model of the Derwent River and that swim. Palm to Shelley, there was really just the current heading north, so swimming into a current of about 0.1 of a knot, and the 4 meter ocean swell. So again, Stokes drift. So we knew that there was going to be some adverse sort of pressure slowing us down for that swim. However, again, drove the entire route, had a strategy in place. One of the things that I guess I do slightly obsessively is actually plan the logistics. One of my dear friends who I swim a lot with is not so much of a pre-planning and preparation type of person. You start actually when everyone's home after the swim and you work back from there. Where does the car need to be? Which cars? Who's getting there? How are they getting home again? What food do we need when we arrive there? What bags do we need? Dry clothes? Who's got the esky full of beer? All of that actually starts from everyone being home again after the event and works back until the week before the event. So that means that I don't think there's a single Rotto channel swim that I've done that hasn't, like a solo, that hasn't included around 10 people being involved in some way on the day or on the days before and after to actually help that swim happen. So it's something that preparation and knowing that there's a logistics plan in place is all part of de-stressing and actually knowing that it's all organised, and therefore the focus can be on preparing for whatever the conditions are forecast to be.
And with that, So for Roddo, it's at home. Over a number of years, you've had more opportunities to become familiar with the logistics around that. What was it like then to go to a different location where you're flying into it? You may not have met your skipper beforehand. Do you have a paddle craft? All those other components. How did you go with the
Mm.
preparation in that respect?
So you never do a swim without meeting the skipper. And again, that's something that we have adapted and learnt from. So Palm to Shelley was following on from the disaster that was the 2024 Rottnest Channel swim. And so the Rottnest Channel swim, we had a borrowed boat that was a bit too small and the conditions were utterly shithouse. And so out of 3 kayakers, my friend Felicia and my wife Carissa were both seasick and hypothermic, and water was just rolling over the boat and it was horrible. And so Palm to Shelley, to kind of make everyone feel a whole lot more better about being actually out in the proper Pacific Ocean, we actually got a 38-foot catamaran as the support boat. And then we found a paddlecraft, Sydney Harbour kayak cruises, and borrowed a couple of kayaks from them. So we actually had a setup that meant that for all of the support crew, they were out on the ocean on a luxury catamaran for the day, and it turned out to be a great adventure. And so it's also really important and around actually not just the swimmer but the whole team, and making things actually workable for the people that are involved in that ocean adventure, because ultimately that's what they are. If you're not actually there trying to chase a medal position, then it's got to be fun. It's got to have that sort of interest, that fun for everyone that's involved in it.
And what do you think you've learned across these 3 swims? What changed the most? Was it your swimming or your understanding?
I think probably understanding, and perhaps it's my understanding of me, and coming to realize that I don't necessarily swim that fast, but with the right preparation, I can just keep on swimming. And actually, it turns out one of the things that I've learned over the last few years, it's not hard, it's just long. And actually getting to swim long, I am not one of these people that can just do a few 10K swims and then I can swim to Rottnest. It takes months and months and months of gradually adding another K a week, another 2Ks. I don't build up quickly, and I can't actually go from just swimming 10Ks to swimming 20Ks. I actually need to build that volume in the lead up to a big swim. And so it's actually appreciating the things, the preparation that actually assists me to actually be able to swim those longer distances. And that could be very different for some of the younger, fitter people that are part of our swimming squad who have that background, young person fitness that they can just go and run a marathon because they felt like it. That's perhaps a bit glib. I'm sure they do a bit of running in the lead up, but that some of them are spectacularly fit.
And so now, I guess, drawing on that knowledge and that understanding, what are you noticing in the water now that you maybe would have completely ignored a few years ago?
I don't know that there's anything. I think that over the past few years, if anything, we're perhaps taking more time to appreciate things. So, for example, Geo Bay swim is fabulous for sightseeing. You're swimming over starfish and little skates and great big stingrays. And November last year, swam over the top of a little shark, I don't know, 3 foot long. And you go, oh, it's a shark. And so it's actually the scenery that you're getting to experience as a swimmer. Derwent River, was stunning. And so on a good day, the Rottnest Channel swim, you can see the bottom except across the channel. And it's spectacular. You know, you're getting to actually explore the ocean in a way that you don't see if you're just jumping on the ferry.
And how much of a difference can small decisions about current or direction actually make over a 6 to 8 hour swim?
Well, if you're fast, you're doing them in 6 to 8 hours. If you're me, you're doing them in 10 or 11 hours. And it makes the difference between finishing and not finishing. That's the bottom line. If you are me and you just swam the rum line to Rottnest and there's a metre per second current pushing north, I'd be making no ground whatsoever. So all of this, you know, the route optimization tool, which for a couple of years we've been the only ones using it, is all about that slingshot at the end that just pushes you into Phillip Rock with the current rather than fighting the current. And that's when you're most tired. That's when it's hardest to actually fight the weather.
And do you ever find yourself over analysing mid swim?
Good question. I certainly analyse mid swim. Some people find long distance swimming quite boring and they have to sing to themselves or count or whatever. Actually thinking about stuff, that's one of the things that long distance swimming is great. You know, there's no phones, there's no one interrupting. In between each feed, your head's down, it's very meditative. It's all about breathing. It's all about actually falling into the rhythm. And once you're in the rhythm, aside from left and right a bit, let go and actually let your brain free to think about stuff. And so I don't know that that's over analyzing. It's certainly analyzing.
And you've mentioned a few times the importance of the support team and the community of those that have assisted. Was there a point in time where you actually realised that this is something you couldn't do on your own, that you actually needed this extra assistance?
I don't know that I'd actually express it in those terms. So you referred to that first team swim to Rottnest, and I actually was kayaker for that swim. I didn't actually swim. By the time we got to Rottnest, it had become painfully clear to me that it's often harder to kayak than it is to swim. I did not realize, like, I was training kayaking and trying to go fast to keep up with swimmers. And actually, for most of that swim, I wound up actually kayaking backwards so that I wasn't actually drifting too far in front of the swimmer. It's really hard to kayak. And so the recognition that actually often it's harder to be on that support crew than it is to actually be the swimmer. And the recognition that actually, as a kayaker, it's a great day out. You know, you're out on the ocean, there's a whole bunch of people having fun. Particularly team swims are a very social event. And so I think rather than seeing it in terms of needing people and needing support and so on, actually it's about that collective experience of the adventure. And it becomes very much a forging of friendships. So having done quite a bit of like ocean sailing, those long distance trips that you do, everyone has to actually have a role and do that role to the best of their abilities. But actually participating in that experience is something that is the foundation of some great friendships.
Now, you mentioned the plan is to attempt the English Channel next year.
Mhm.
Sitting here now, what do you feel you still don't fully understand about the channel?
So there's a couple of aspects. One aspect is the engineering aspect, and that's the fairly obvious, easy one of the currents, and it drifts you north and it drifts you south. But that's one that we have access to the data, we have access to the skill sets to be able to actually do the analysis and come to an idea on what the optimal route for that swim might be. We still haven't done it, but it's there to be done, and there's a reasonable basis to believe that we have the skills to actually have a good crack at that. The pilot and the boat crew, I haven't yet had the chance to meet. And so that's one aspect where it's not yet a known to what extent they will be open to playing around with the route that we take. A lot of those channel swim pilots are generations in the making. They're grandchildren of people that have actually been doing channel swim piloting. And so they have a lot of experience. And so we don't want to kind of disregard their cumulative knowledge. But at the same time, we are very interested to actually have a crack and see what we can do in terms of engineer that swim. Then there's the cold. So doing river swim was 10 hours and whatever, 15:45, a bit over 10 hours in 16 degrees, but the channel could be anything from 9 degrees to 15 degrees. So it's a step up in terms of the cold weather challenge. So that's one that I need to work towards. There's the preparation and how to go about actually doing that training when most of my trips to Europe, like I'm spending about 3 months a year in Europe at the moment, but it's work travel, so it's all over the place, and actually doing longer distance training swims in Europe. I haven't yet got a firm plan for how to do that final preparation. And so that's something that 12 months out, it's going to come into focus fairly soon for what that preparation plan is going to look like.
What have these long swims given you outside of swimming?
Continuing appreciation for the ocean and for the fact that you don't get to choose the conditions. All you can choose is how you respond to the conditions. You can prepare, you can plan, and you can adapt, but you really don't have much say on whether it's going to be a shitty day in the ocean. And just over the last weekend, had some fabulous opportunities to sit and watch the ocean have a little tantrum. And it's spectacular. It's beautiful. But there are times where you don't want to go swimming in it. I think one of the best swims that I've done was actually a year or two ago. It was a Floriet Surf Club 10K swim where they should have called it off because it was shit-house conditions. And I think it took me, 4 hours and 15 or something to actually do the 10Ks, which it's well outside qualifying time, but I didn't need it as a qualifier. But to go and spend 4 hours actually smashing through really rough conditions is great training. And the Rockingham open water swim is often like that because often they've had that on a Sunday afternoon in summer when the sea breeze is howling. And so to actually train in those really rough conditions rather than just when it's nice and calm is a great experience. So that's actually really good to have the chance to do some rough weather training. And then when it is getting rough, it's actually not so scary because you're familiar with the fact that it's actually going to, randomly get rolled over by waves that just happen to break over you. It's those conditions actually that are way harder for kayak.
Now, I'd like to finish off with a couple of quicker questions. The hardest Triple Crown swim?
They're all hard. There's no one of them that's been harder than the other. They're hard in different ways. And I couldn't have done any of them had I not actually done the preceding swims.
The most underrated factor in open water swimming?
A good question. Preparation, perhaps?
Best decision mid-swim?
I've only DNF'd once, and that was not counting the 2024 Roto Channel swim, where they actually cancelled the event midway. was a geo-bay swim, and it was swimming into a 15-knot howling easterly, and it was actually really, really horrible for the kayakers. And so it was like, you know what? No one's having fun. This is meant to be a fun swim, you know. So handed in my badge and then hopped on the kayak for the team that was actually also trying to finish, and they finished. But it was a long, tough day on the water for a team, let alone trying to finish a solo. So I think it's the only DNF I've done, and it was, I think, the right call.
You might have answered this already. The worst conditions you swum in.
I think actually one of the Rockingham Sunday afternoon swims when it was howling sea breeze. Floreat was bad, but that was 10K. I think some of the washing machine conditions in Rockingham have been the worst.
Your favourite swim set and why?
I don't know that I particularly have one. I would say actually it's probably the jetty to jetties at Coogee. Just when it's early morning after Rotto Channel swim and the water's empty, everyone, all the Rotto swimmers are hung up their bathers and goggles and sleeping in. And so you've got just calm conditions and it's beautiful. And to just swim in that clear, calm water. And the challenge with 25-meter pools is all the turns. I'm not very good at turning. So 1.5 kilometer laps, that's much better.
You did answer this one earlier, but I'll ask it again. A singer or a counter?
Neither. I Zen meditate. Brain flies off everywhere. The big challenge is actually head-on collisions. I had a head-on collision in the net Sunday morning because I was just swimming away and someone else was swimming away, not looking closely enough, and crashed into them. You can really get into the zone when you're swimming.
And finally, one piece of advice that you'd like to share.
Give it a crack, I reckon. Not for getting your name on a website that said you've done the Triple Crown. Give it a crack because each of those swims is an epic adventure, and the experience of having swum them is incredible.
Thank you so much, Terry, for taking the time to catch up and talk about your swimming experiences. It's been a real pleasure.
I hope it turns out to be interesting for people.
If there's one thing that stood out to me in that conversation with Terry, it's the idea that open water swimming isn't really about controlling the conditions. It's about learning how to respond to them. As Terry put it, you don't get to choose the day you're given, but you can prepare, plan, and adapt. And that mindset runs through everything he's done, from his first rod nest solo through to completing the Australian Triple Crown. It's not about being the fastest swimmer. It's about being curious enough to keep learning and persistent enough to keep going. If you're someone who's been thinking about taking on a longer swim or just wanting to approach your time in the water a bit more thoughtfully, there's a lot to take away from this one. If you've enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it with someone who you think would get something out of it. And as always, I really appreciate you taking the time to listen. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the water.